I will be forever the myth.
You're the king of kings, huh?
There's always a pecking order. The little packers never mess with the big packers. So I'm a rooster, and he's a chicken, so to speak.
All right, welcome back to the Bodybuilding Legends Podcast. I have a very special guest with us this week. His name is Mr. Mario Nieves, and Mario won many bodybuilding titles. He was kind of my idol growing up in Chicago. I looked up to him. He was one of the first real bodybuilders I ever saw. So, Mario, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with you, John. I've also watched your trajectory through bodybuilding. You've done really good for yourself, and at your age, you look fabulous, which is something that I'm concerned about. A lot of bodybuilders, most never reach 50, so it's kind of sad. So to see you really healthy, and some of the other guys, I trained a lot of people, and I get letters from people at Christmas time and throughout the year thanking me for changing their lives.
Yeah.
Even though I left bodybuilding many years ago, people never forgot me.
Yeah. Well, I also want to mention today's your birthday, so happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. Something that I never mentioned much, but I think a few people found out, and I've had the phones tied up since yesterday.
Okay.
But it feels good to be this age. I came up at a time that most of you guys will remember. It was John Grimmick who wrote for muscle
development,
muscle training or something like that. I almost forgot the name.
Yeah.
With Bob Hoffman. Bob Hoffman was an older man. John Grimmick was in his late 60s.
Yeah.
And I went to the YMCA and I met two guys that I never forget because I used to run a lot also. And I was running and they said, man, you're 18 years old and here you are running with all the kids that are hanging out. And they asked me, how old do you think I am? And well, at 18, you can't really tell people. And I said, well, I don't know. I'd say about 55 or whatever. He goes, no, I'm 67 and this gentleman here is 80. I could not believe it. And they were running track.
Okay.
And I said, see, they said, so it's nice to see you here. He says, now that you got your body together and you're running, we're going to tell you to do one more thing. Learn how to play chess. It's the only thing they told me, because they were kind of proud. They see me running every day. I did learn how to play chess, by the way, really well. I never forgot them because longevity is very, very important in life. I mean, some people may not look at it that way. I remember going to school and the kids took cocaine, drunk like heck, and stuff like that. I never criticized anybody. That's why I fit in with everybody, but I never drank liquor and I don't take drugs.
Wow, that's fantastic. So, Mario, let's start at the beginning. What did you grow up in Chicago? Were you born in Chicago?
Actually, unbelievably, I was born on a farm in Puerto Rico.
Really? Okay.
And it was to me, it was heaven because I remember the little hummingbirds and the little clay nest and all the other birds. I used to love birds because what else do you see on a farm? And we had animals, we had goats and chickens and ducks and stuff. But I love the wild animals, iguanas and everything else. And I was a kid that could play all over. My mom let us play in front of the house, which is the whole huge 3 acres. We were poor, but I could never tell you that I was poor there. I was a kid that lived on a farm.
Yeah.
I was never hungry. And one day, my mom says, well, we're going to America, and we got on an airplane, and we landed, how else can I explain it, in the middle of hell? A kid from a farm that says, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, you better never steal, you better never get into a fight. My mom said, if you ever get into a fight, I will whip the living hell out of you, because my mom raises with a lot of love, but a real firm hand, thank God.
Yeah.
And I landed in Chicago and went to live in the projects.
No kidding. Wow. Why did you guys move to Chicago?
Between night and day.
Wow. Why did you end up moving? Did your mom tell you?
Well, yeah, because my dad had come to America to work. He worked in a factory, and where we were at, people worked as sugarcane cutters. They were all farmers.
Yeah.
Well, sugarcane had a season, and after the season, you had nothing. So obviously, they needed money. As a kid, I don't see it that way because my mom planted, and we always ate. And my mom sewed really well, so she sewed all my clothes that I went to school with. So I really was never missing anything until I came to the real cold weather. But to make a long story short, I think coming to America for some people that go through what I went through can either destroy you or make you a better human being.
Yeah.
And thanks to my mom who raised it with a firm hand and a lot of love, I became a better human being. So I think that I could survive easily in Tokyo, Japan, in Mexico City. If you're raised in Chicago or New York City, you couldn't survive any city situation. And I think that's probably why I have been able to start a motorcycle organization in America, which is very dangerous to be involved in clubs and stuff like that, and actually be able to handle it because I was raised in the projects and we fought gangs and everything. So I can handle just about anything. So we've been very fortunate. But the kid that was raised on the farm, real respectable. My grandfather used to take me to church because he was a deacon. And every week he'd walk me to church with him when I went to the city to visit him. We lived on a farm. And so that kid never changed. That kid remained as I am today. In fact, I ride the world preaching. And basically what I preach is what my grandfather taught me. Peace, love, harmony, nonviolence, and love everybody.
Wow. Well, that's a great upbringing you had.
Yeah.
So how did you get involved in
I had the best of both worlds because I had the farm, which I still have in me. And right now I'm in Rockford near Belvedere, near a farm area. So it's lovely. Still love farms. But I was raised in a city, which gives you character. And Humboldt Park, I moved from the projects to Humboldt Park. It was like from going from the frying pan into the fire when I was 16 years old. Wow. But we survived it all. And it's been an extremely good lesson. I think that I have rapport with everybody everywhere I go.
Okay. So how'd you get involved in bodybuilding, Mario? What was your interest in that?
Well, I was a skinny run. Obviously, when I was in Puerto Rico, I had big cheeks. My brother had big cheeks. We still have pictures. We ate real good. My mom always planted stuff on the farm, fresh corn, fresh potatoes, everything. Then we came to America and we really, really faced some hard times. I know America was doing great, but for poor people, they're bad everywhere. So I lost my cheeks. I was super skinny. By the time I was 12, I couldn't stand the way I looked. You know, the only way I can explain it is how some of these gay people that says, I'm a woman, but I was born with a man's body. Mm-hmm. I was a muscle man born with a skinny body. and that is not the way I wanted to look. I wanted to look different. Yeah. So at 12 or 13, I don't remember exactly, or even before then, I saw the movie with Steve Reeves, Hercules.
Yeah.
Steve Reeves is still I idolize because I have always been a lover of symmetry above all. Yeah. And the guy was handsome, had a gorgeous beard. He looked like a man. And I'm not one of those guys that's ashamed to say that man is good looking because in all honesty, there's nothing gay about me. I was born to love women, but I call a spade a spade. And I think that helped me when I trained a lot of people. Yeah. A teacher should never be afraid to make his students better than him. And so I ended up admiring Steve Reeves, and I said, I want to look like that, but I had nothing. I was a poor kid, so I started doing push-ups and doing chin-ups on where my mom used to hang clothes and stuff like that. Yeah. When I finally was able to train with a friend of mine, I was like 14, and he got a set of weights. So I used to go to his house 4 times a week, and we trained together. And eventually, we moved out of the projects. He quit training, and I went to visit him, and I bought his weights for $5. I bought a 110-pound set for $5 that I brought home on the bus, on the CTA bus.
You brought it home on the bus?
I created I built a bench and an incline bench. It was very important back then. Yeah. And I used a set. And by the time I got into high school, or that happened around my junior year, my coach in school really wanted me to wrestle, but I didn't want to wrestle because to wrestle, you always have to lose a little weight. And I didn't understand that because I was skinny. I never wanted to lose weight. I wanted to gain weight. But he was so convincing. His name was Tony Oliver. God bless him. He was Italian. And I love America because of all these different nationalities that are here. And he talked me into wrestling. So I would wrestle the wrestling season. And then I go back to weight training when I was done. Okay. And I was one of the first people that ever lifted weights that did sports. Because it was taboo to lift weights because weights make you muscle bound. They ruin you. You can't do nothing. Right. By the time I got done wrestling, he had everybody lifting weights.
No kidding. Wow. Yeah. What year was that, Mario?
That was 1966, 1967.
Wow.
Don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
And then I graduated and I went to the YMCA to train with weights because that was my real love. I went to work. I went to the YMCA. I started training and I took my little brothers. And I constantly tell people, the elder brother plays a huge role in how the little brothers turn out. First of all, my dad was never worth anything, but my mom really did a good job, and we had to get away from him, so we did. But my mom did a fabulous job with it. Like I said, she was firm. But I was the big brother, and I didn't drink, and I didn't smoke. So my little brothers ended up following me, and they followed me straight to the gym.
Wow.
We won all the intramural tournaments at the YMCA, and after that, I got drafted.
Okay.
When I came back, my training partner was a state champion. in bodybuilding. He was Mr. Illinois. But me, I went to Vietnam and got dragged behind. So I got out of Vietnam and came home Wednesday. Monday, I was in the gym and on the job.
How many years were you in Vietnam?
I was in Vietnam 15 months.
15 months, okay.
When I went in, you only had to do 10, but I re-upped 5 because if you had less than 6 months left, 5 months, if you had less than 5 months left, when you left Vietnam, they sent you straight home. So I was going to have 10 months left. So I re-upped 5 extra months to stay in Vietnam. 15, I went straight home.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay. So who was your partner that won Mr. Illinois?
Oh, that was Miss Willie Banos. Way back. Willie Banos, that had to be 1970, I'd say. And when I came back, I started training with him again, but he was winning all the championships. Back then, really bulk was in, and I was really more defined and more finished. Okay. But he would always beat me, and I was proud because he was my training partner anyway. And he told me one day, he says, you know, Mari, one day you're going to win, and they're not going to stop you because you have the body that should be winning. I said, but you know what, Willie, don't worry about it. The main thing is that we're at the top 2, you know. And then he because he had won the Illinois, he could not go back to any of the smaller competitions. And I, on the other hand, played it smart. I started with a novice. And then after the novice, I went to the juniors. And then after the juniors, I went to the seniors. So I racked up like more than 12, 15 tournaments before I went to the Illinois. Because at that time, first of all, I used to train very hard, very fast, and I was lean. And I was gaining weight real slow, but I was lean. So I was able to compete, and I never really tried to get in shape for a competition. I just decided I'm going to keep trying to gain weight, and I'm going to compete as I am, regardless of how I do. Because my main goal was to get over 206 pounds, you know, and I was by that time, I was about 170. Okay. But incidentally, because of the weight training, I was city wrestling champ at Orr High School in my senior year. Yeah. Our team was city wrestling champ as individuals and city wrestling champs as a team. Wow. So we cleaned up.
No kidding. Where did you work out at, Mario?
I worked out at Division Street YMCA most of the time, but what happened was Division Street YMCA was a dilapidated, rundown YMCA. I went to train there, took my brothers because it was a neighborhood. And then I decided I'm going to stay here because these people don't have anybody to help them out. So I was like a personal, a trainer, a volunteer trainer. I had a lot of friends and I helped them all. They loved me. And we won a lot of contests. And it didn't cost them anything except whatever they paid at the Y. But I was like their own trainer. And I always felt that it was my duty to do something for people like myself that had less than most and help them out. And sometimes people will come from California and look at the place and say, I cannot believe you train here. I said, I do.
Yeah. Did you know Sergio back then?
I trained with Sergio a couple of months. I love Sergio. I'm probably one of the guys that'll tell you I love Sergio because Sergio was always very honest. I trained with Sergio 3 months. He never, ever tried to sell me drugs. He never told me, Mar, you have to take steroids. He was a really good guy. But what he did tell me is, Mar, I know you're trying to do it your way. It is the hard way, but you're going to be competing against people that take a lot of drugs. If you don't take anything, you're going to be at a disadvantage. And that kind of made me even stronger of doing what I wanted to do, which I was successful to a degree, but really on the long run, I was wrong.
Yeah. What was it like to train with Sergio? That had to be amazing.
Well, Sergio asked me to train with him because even though I was a thin guy, and I had won Mr. Illinois already, but I trained hard. I went to Duncan Y a couple of times, and I always trained very, very hard. And I always trained to failure. Yeah. And then when I went to train with Sergio, I learned that my failure was nothing because he really trained to failure. And I will say this about Sergio. I did not copy his routine because we were different, but I sure copied his style of training. He gave it everything he had, and he did not do 4 sets of 10. He did 4 sets of 30, 21, 14, 10, 8. Wow. Every time he got under that bar, he did as many reps as he could, and I had never experienced that.
Wow.
And he was massive. I've never seen any man like him. Today, there's a lot, but he was very massive and had a really good body. But again, the people that I truly idolized were Frank Zane, Steve Reeves, and people along those lines. But that doesn't mean that I didn't like Sergio. Sergio had an incredible body.
Yeah. So this was probably, the early 70s, late 60s?
I'm going to say that had to be about 73. that I trained at Duncan Y.
Okay.
There were so many stars at Duncan Y. Bob Guida. There was a lot of the weight Olympic lifting champions. Bob Guida ran that part of the YMCA.
Yeah.
And he did a fantastic job at bringing in people that were talented. I just happened to drop in. I wasn't one of the talents, but I came back to the division and realized, you know, those guys are really so darn good. I did learn a little, but there's nobody at the YMCA to help the people from the ghetto people. They're here.
Yeah.
There's no, so I'll stay, and that's what I did.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about Sergio's training, because I heard you're probably all training everybody was training 6 days a week back then, right? And
yes.
Lots of sets, lots of exercises.
And I believe Sergio was training 2 body parts per day.
Okay.
Or that type of a split. Sometimes it's 3, because if you do your back, you also do your traps. So let's just say 2 body parts. I always train half the body one day and half the next.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Wow.
For me. And I believe the reason that worked for me is because I wasn't involved in the chemical warfare. So I needed to do something different. Keep in mind, I can train anyone, including your great-grandmother. I can train anyone. Mm-hmm. But if you go to the average gym, most of the guys are on heavy steroids. They do not know how your body normally works.
Yeah, yeah. And
that's the problem. So they come up with these great ideas on how to train, but in all honesty, that's not the way the human physiology works, the human body. And so I don't put them down. I'm not gonna just criticize them, but I know why I did things the way I did.
Yeah. So were you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Were you going 6 days a week like everybody else was back then, Mario? Or were you?
Yes. Okay. I train 6 days a week. I'll split half the body one day, the other half the next. I train extremely hard, even when I was bulking up. I remember doing 315, 30 times, 35 times. I just kept pushing it, always to the max.
Yeah.
You know, I would warm up with 135, 225, which right now will probably kill me. And then I would start, my first set would be 315, as many as I could get until my lungs wanted to burst. Then I would go to 365 and 405, blah, blah. And so this is the way I trained everything. Bench press, 225, I started, maybe 20, whatever rep, as many as I could do. Every set was done to failure, 4 sets.
Wow.
Obviously, if I was to train now, I'd probably only do 3 sets, and I would train a lot different because your joints, as you get older, you have to worry about your the joints, and also the ligaments and tendons are very important. Absolutely. You got to babysit.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting about Sergio, because I always heard he did like a pumping up, you know, he would be pump up. But then I heard Arnold talk about him, and Arnold said he trained extremely hard, and I also heard he was really strong, so he trained really heavy.
He was very strong, and he could run. Sergio could run.
No kidding.
And, really. And what impressed me about Sergio, I can see why people say he used to pump up.
Yeah.
I could. Can you imagine doing 35 reps with 360 pounds?
No.
That's pumping up. Yeah. The guy will pump up, put 405 on the bench, and I guess you could call it pumping. He would just do short reps. I didn't like doing short reps, but he did. I like doing full range of motion. One of the things that I learned for myself is to use the full range of motion. But if you watch Sergio, you also know that when he shortchanged a specific movement by doing a short movement, he made up for it in the next movement that he did. For instance, he would do short curls, right? Mm-hmm. But then he would go on another machine or whatever, and he'd do the long curl and specialize, which works different parts of the bicep. So he was really good at that. I was smart enough to look at what he did and observe it really well, while the other guys that trained with Sergio were only there to try to beat him with the weight, and that they would just do everything wrong.
Okay.
He heavy weight, and that's it. They never really quite understood what it was that he was trying to do. And here's a guy with a chest this thick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, I got into bodybuilding in the late 70s, so I got to see Sergio, you know, I guess at the late 70s, early 80s, and I try to describe to people how incredible he looked, and it's hard to describe it because, like you said, there's a lot of big guys now, but back then, he was the only one that looked like that. I never see anyone else look like that.
He was the only one. I remember seeing him and Arnold, and I admire Arnold. He was good, but Arnold looked skinny next to Sergio.
Really?
I'll tell you how I describe Sergio. The first time I ever saw him, I think I was 17. And I saw him standing like this, just standing relaxed with this arm up. And the only way I remembered I wanted to describe it to people, I looked at his tricep, and it looked like a slick tire in the back of a race car. It is the only way I can explain it. The back of his arm, the tricep, looked like a slick tire on the back of a racing car. That's my description of what Sergio looked like.
Sticking out, yeah.
Unreal. And also he had a small waist, small hips.
Yeah.
He had an incredible bone structure because he also was one of the black people I've seen besides Chris Dickerson that had incredible calves.
Yeah. Yeah. He really wasn't lacking in any body parts, right? He had everything.
His forearms.
Yeah.
His forearms were so big that his wrists looked small.
Yeah.
His forearms would go out like this and like this. And then I said, but look at how big his wrist is. So I decided I got to remember how I put my wrist next to his. His wrist was big compared to mine.
Really?
But it was his forearm. His forearm made his wrist look tiny.
Yeah. He looks like he's got tiny joints, but it was just he had so much muscle.
He had a lot of muscle. He had a perfect bone structure. A lot that people would love to have. And I liked him because he was a normal fellow. He used to go to Humboldt Park.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we sit there chatting and maybe eating some ethnic food that we bought from Puerto Ricans in Humboldt Park. And I said, wow, this is incredible. The police came to tell us one time, this before he was a policeman, I don't know why you guys hang around here, man. This park is full of thugs and gangs and stuff. This is bad. And I looked at Sergio, he looked at me, and we told the police officer, you don't understand. We are the people that are supposed to be in this park, not the gangs and the thugs and everybody else. We need to get them out of here. We are the people. That's why we're here.
Right.
And he would get a chair and he would sit there drinking some Coca-Cola or whatever he was drinking. And people will come up to him, regular people, and talk to him and everything. And I said, look, this man, I'm telling myself, this man just went to Europe, won the professional championship, went to Europe and picked up maybe $10,000, $15,000 doing guest posing, which did not exist in those days.
Right.
Nobody guest posed for money. Sergio was one of the first. He was asked to go to Europe and pay. And he made, like, one time he made $15,000 at a time when people were making maybe $100 a week.
Yeah.
At work.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that had to be great to know him on a personal level too. I mean, the guy had such charisma and he was such a down-to-earth guy, like you said, He
was. Some people did not like him or he rubbed them wrong, but I think I learned, even myself in bodybuilding and in life, when you're really famous or very popular, people want to stick to you like glue. That's the first step, is that admiration. Mm-hmm. Then comes the second step. The second step is when they feel, wow, he's just like me. Then comes the third step a month or two later when, man, screw him. I'm just like him. He ain't no better than me. Right. And don't realize he's not trying to be better than you. He just wants to be a regular guy just like me and you.
Yeah,
so calm down. But no, people are that way. And I used to tell my friends that if you get really good at anything, just remember, you're going to have those three steps with some people. Get away from them before they take the third step. Yeah.
So what year did you see Arnold? Was that when Arnold came to America?
I saw Arnold for the first time. Had to be, I'm thinking maybe 85, because I think it was 85 or 86 that I won the Midwest Open.
Okay.
Sergio was Arnold was a guest poser at the Midwest Open, which was held by Norm Zale back then. Yeah. YMCA guy Norm Zale.
Yeah.
But I had seen Arnold before that at the YMCA with Sergio one time. The only time I saw him. I never really thought much of Arnold. I do understand he had a nice body, but he didn't impress me any kind of way until I realized how intelligent he was.
Mm.
And I told my friend, as time passes, I admire the hell out of Arnold. He is not a regular guy.
Yeah.
He is brilliant. You get to know people when you speak to them.
Yeah.
And I remember telling my friend who had come from Nicaragua and I was training him, he was just a skinny kid. He got really good later. I said, you know what? Arnold Schwarzenegger will someday be governor of California. He will not be the president of the U.S. because he wasn't born here, and that's a law. But you know what? Take it from me. He will be the governor.
No kidding.
12 years later, this kid called me and said, Mar, you remember what you told me? I said, yeah. He says, well, Arnold just won. I said, I know, I'm watching it. That's how much I thought of him as a businessman. While he was training, he went to school.
Yeah.
He just didn't live off the muscle. He did a lot of things to improve himself. Yeah. And that's the American way.
So the year that he came to the YMCA, that was 69, right? When him and Sergio trained together? No?
I didn't see him in 69.
Okay.
I didn't see him in 69. I saw him after that, much after that. At 69, I trained at the Division Street YMCA from 68 to August 69. Then I got drafted. So I know that I didn't see him then. I came back, and in maybe 73, I went to the about 3 months, and I trained with Sergio. And one day, whenever it was at that, I don't remember whether I went back another time, but I do remember seeing Arnold at the YMCA speaking with Sergio. And Sergio looked huge next to him. But remember, bodybuilding is a funny thing because we can look good standing, but the minute you start posing is everything, and definition was everything. And I believe that as Sergio was extremely defined for the normal circumstances that were then. But what happened was definition took a huge drive upwards in getting extremely defined, and a lot of bulky guys could only get defined to a point, and then they would start to disappear. So they had to keep that balance between how bulky do you stay. Whereas guys like myself, Joe Means, Frank Zane, and a few others could actually go down to the bone and look fantastic, lean and cut up. Yeah.
Do you remember what it was that Arnold said to you where you thought this guy's going to go far? You know, he's very intelligent.
No, it was just actually the first time that I got to speak to Arnold and listen to him, I didn't have that great of an opinion. This came with a succession of things that I saw that he was doing. Okay. Lance Dreyer, who was a teenager at the time, admired, like I did, Arnold, and went and told him, hey, someday I want to be as good as you. I hope to beat you. And Arnold looked at him in a little bit of a narcissistic way and told him, well, before you beat me, you got to beat all those other guys that I beat. And I told myself, I think, for me, I said, I think that's a little crass. I would have told the kid, you know what, kid, stay with it, keep going. One day you'll probably beat me. But everybody has their own way of thinking. I have mine and he had his. Right. That aside, as I saw Arnold, I got to see him again, but it wasn't so much what he said, it's watching the guy. He created a business. Before he got into movies, he was already making a lot of money in real estate. While he was working with Joe Weider, which he was not doing nothing like Joe Weider said. They were loading, him and Franco Colombo were loading trucks, but Joe Weider made him look great, which was good for publicity. But he was going to school. He went to the university. He was studying business. And when I listened to him on several times that he spoke, I had to say, this guy's sharp. This guy's sharp. And Sergio, on the other hand, was a little different. He told me, Mar, you know, you have an education, and you're a handsome fellow. I'm just an ugly black guy. You can go a long way. Just like that, he said, you can go a long way in this field because you have a great attitude. And I said, you know, thanks, Serge, but don't worry. I don't know how long I'm going to be in the field. And I stayed with it because I love bodybuilding. Was my most powerful obsession. I love bodybuilding. I live, breathe. There's another thing between me and Sergio that was different is I never wore a lot of clothes that exhibited my body. Sergio wore the teeny shirts with the arms. I'm not knocking him. I loved them that way, but it wasn't me. I was the one that wore the baggy clothes and the baggy pants, and I couldn't care less about how I looked on the street. But the minute I got up on a stage, I was a whole different person. Everybody has their own little idiosyncrasy. I never cared about showing myself too much on the street. Sergio was a star. He looked the teeny waist, the wide shoulders, the huge arms. Couldn't miss him.
Well, like you said, the waist too. I mean, not only did he have all this massive size that no one else had, but that small waist, he was incredible.
Unbelievably small. That it was.
Wow. Yeah, I remember growing up, like I said, I got into bodybuilding in the late 70s, and there was always the debate, especially in Chicago. You know, everybody thought Sergio got ripped off by Weider, and Sergio was always the better bodybuilder than Arnold, you know.
Well, what happened was I believe that there was a ripoff one time, and I can tell you exactly where it happened because what the Weiders would invest a lot of money in someone, they made sure they won. But when Eddie Silvestri was from Mexico, he was a one-time Mr. Mexico. He created the Mr. International competition. Everybody that was anybody had gone and won that competition, including Sergio. And obviously, Eddie Silvestri was a really fair guy. He had judges that were prepared to do the judging and everything for every contest. He had judged the top bodybuilders in the world. They had judged. Now comes Arnold to compete with Sergio, and Weider refused to let him compete unless they could put their own judges.
I remember that.
That created a huge problem because that created a chasm between Weider and Silvestri that kind of ended their relationship. But they did have to used Reader's judges, and Arnold won. And that is why there was so much worry about the fix. And at that time, in that contest, Arnold was not ready. Arnold's great lesson was Frank Zane.
Yeah.
When Frank Zane beat Arnold, and you could say, well, Frank Zane was no good. But you know what? Any little fella who is really defined, finished, and ready to go can beat any big guy that's not prepared.
Yeah.
So I believe that when Arnold saw what Frank Zane did, he says, you know what? At my size, if I did the same thing, I'd kill Sergio. That's exactly what he did. He did. And Sergio could not get that defined because he was naturally defined anyway from his hard work, high reps and everything, but he did not go any further to get more definition. And so they passed him up. But Arnold did not deserve the Mr. International that he won in Mexico.
Yeah, yeah. When you hung around with Sergio, did he ever diet for contests? I heard he always ate like hamburgers and tacos and drank Coca-Cola and stuff, you know, and that's why he could never get in shape.
I didn't hang around with him that much. I went to train with him. I'm going to say that he probably watched what he ate, but he did not diet. I'd agree with that because Sergio looked fantastic all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas if we look at some of the champs today, when you look at them off contest time, they're chubby.
Yeah.
And when you look at them in the competition, they're a whole different person. Sergio looked fantastic all the time. And I believe that on the long run hurt him from not getting in shape and getting super cut, which was necessary.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, the sport changed because, you know, especially when Zane came along, the definition was so important.
I remember that I had spent all those years gaining weight. I won 43 tournaments because back then I did not follow this. Well, I can't compete because I got to get in shape like 3 months from now. I just walked in. Yeah. And by luck, I won many of them. But then by 75, I was already around 200 and I was starting to lose tournaments. But I let it go because I said, I'm just going to go in and see how I do. I remember one Midwest I went and I got beat by someone else. And they told me, why would you come like that? I said, no, I just wanted to see how I did, blah, blah, blah. And then in 76, I went to a tournament. I went and Joe Means was there. Mm-hmm. And when I looked at Joe Means, and then I looked at him on the stage and I looked at him next to me, I said, wow, he doesn't have that much mass. But look at the way he looks on the stage. And I'm going to say that Joe Means was one of the guys that had the most impact on me because I met him about the time that I was gaining enough weight where I was going to start dieting. Mm-hmm. And by luck, I met him. Then the other guy that I met, which impressed me, was Aníbal Lopez. Aníbal Lopez was a Puerto Rican from New York that I met in Oklahoma. I went to Stillwater, Oklahoma for the Junior or Mr. USA or Junior USA. And he didn't win. He got, I think, second or third. Paul Hill won that tournament. Yeah. But when I looked at Aníbal Lopez, I said, but if I wanted to have a body, I would have Aníbal's because he had beautifully diamond-shaped calves. He had really nice symmetry, but his chest was a little weak, but he made up for it with definition. And that kind of set me on the road where I said, well, now I will be ready. After that tournament, I finally made 2012. And that's when I started getting ready the following year in 77. And I started competing again once I started getting in shape. And then like I won the Tri-States that George Rumas used to run. Yeah. And I was not even in shape yet. Everybody thought I looked fantastic, but I wasn't done. I wasn't done. Yeah. I got done when I went to the Junior America. And I was lucky because the difference was unbelievable. But I must admit, looking at Joe Means and then Aníbal Lopez did help. It's always good to see someone, and that I was prepared. I would have never done that at 3 years earlier at a lighter body weight, but I had already gotten at 200. I could place third or whatever, but I wasn't going to take anything, you know. Yeah,
yeah. Mario, let me ask you about, like you said, when you were younger, you were really lean and it was hard for you to gain weight, and then you slowly gained weight. How did you gain the weight? You were training 6 days a week, and were you eating a lot of food, or was it just because you weren't using drugs or anything?
No, but I found that one thing that I found, and I think is something, a key for the average person to keep in mind, if you do sports, say you do football, wrestling, basketball, the minute you stop the sport, walk into the gym and start lifting weights. Don't wait 2 months. Walk into the gym a couple of days later, start training. Why? because that shock to the body of going from a long endurance sport to weight training, it's like a sponge, and you'll start to grow. And I think that I grew a lot after the wrestling season. I go right to train, and I started growing, but it wasn't a huge growth like you have now. I can't deny. I eventually left bodybuilding because I realized that I was not going to do what was necessary. I love bodybuilding, but it had changed immensely, and I was not going to do what they're doing to win the Mr. Olympia. And I'm glad. I'm glad I did that. I don't knock the guys that win. There's a price to everything. But I gained 7 pounds a year.
Okay.
Busted my butt of muscle. But in 10 years, it was 70-something pounds.
Yeah. Wow.
And I would gauge myself. And one year I was having a really hard time. And I said, well, I weigh about 170 or something. And the way I'm going to win the Mr. America, gaining like this, I'll be 60 years old. That's not possible. I have to put my mind together. I have to really buckle down and train and see if I gain or not. I'm going to quit, because I'm not just going to train like this for nothing. And you have to look at how much improvement you make. I gauge myself. When I went to tournaments, I would take my brother or my wife, because my wife wasn't a normal person. She would be honest with me. Remember, moms are the worst because their baby looks the best in the world. But you need somebody that will give you constructive criticism and tell you, Mar, this is what you did wrong, and this is what you need, and this is why that guy beat you, blah, blah, blah. And my brother was the same way. So that helped me a lot. Yeah. I kept people around me that will tell me the truth. And that helped me also. But I also met Chris Dickerson. I don't remember where, but I did meet Chris Dickerson in one of the tournaments, and I had a talk with him. And I remember it because I used to admire Chris Dickerson quite a bit because of his calves and everything else. Mm-hmm. And he told me, well, this is what you're doing, Mario. You've got to decide what you want to do. You're playing basketball Saturday and Sunday. You're doing something else during the week, and then you're training. You're burning the candle at both ends in the middle. So if you want to be a champion, what you have to do, you have to stop the running, stop the other sports, stop the basketball, and concentrate on training for so long. And then after you finish, then say, well, I want to run some. Because due to wrestling and my upbringing, I can run long distance, or at least I used to. I have run 30 miles, not 5 or 10. I have run 30 miles after coming out of the service. So running to me was like, I take to running like a duck takes to water. Yeah. So, but I was running 10 miles like nothing. Then I was playing basketball on the weekends, and Chris Dickerson says, well, you know, I admire you, but that's not going to help you win any contest. You're burning the candle all the way, and it's not good. So I did listen to him. I had to buckle down and stop the things I like, but it helped. That got me on another level, another step, and I was headed in the right direction. So meeting people that can give you some constructive criticism is good. I'll give you one, and I like the guy, but I'll give you one that gave me some criticism, not for me, but he was in a seminar. It was Pete Gromkowski. Okay. Pete Gromkowski was giving a seminar on the South Side, 170-something gym that they had out there, which I like those guys too. And I come from hard training to failure. I trained to failure each set. Yeah. He says, no, we don't do that anymore. This is what we do. We're now working on actually just flexing really, really hard. Just take yourself and you're going to squat. Don't use any weight. Flex real hard. Go down. Flex real hard. Come up, because we believe that that's working really well. Now, I'm not going to deny that was working for him, but my question to him was, how did you train 5 years ago? Because he said, well, no, we train different. Well, that's what I want to know, how you trained then. How'd you get because big? That's how you got the body you have now. But I didn't mean to be a smart ass. But everybody has their own little idiosyncrasy, but you also got to look, what are they using? If you're not using the same thing, or if you're a natural bodybuilder can't train like all those guys. Right. What were some of the other bodybuilders you met during that time? Because that was a great time to be in bodybuilding, late 60s, early 70s. It was renaissance of bodybuilding. Yeah. I don't remember meeting too many people. Obviously, I met Bob Guida. Yeah. He was the guy that won Mr. America over Sergio. Bob Guida was a whiz. To this day, I like him. He was a great guy, and he was a really smart bodybuilder. But I believe Sergio should have beat him. But, you got to be realistic. In those days, a black man could not win the Mr. America. It was really frowned on. I remember Chris Dickerson being the first black fellow to ever win the Mr. America. So that was a problem. There were other black people that were really good that also didn't win. So, you had the usual cultural problems that you have in any country here in America. Yeah. But I feel like this, I don't use everything as a crutch. I use things to make me really give it hell. If you tell me that I can't do something because of this, then I'm going to figure out I'm either going to quit or I'm going to prove to you wrong.
Yeah.